Welcome to everybody. This is a webinar organized by the FEES, the Federation of Ergonomic Association in Europe. The participants will be Pascal Etienne from the FEES. He is an executive board member. Alexander, which is present, and he is from the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering, University of Belgrade. Pedro Ferreira, he will come soon. He is from Santec East, University of Lisbon, Portugal. Myself, President of FEES and CEO of Ergodec Company. Julia Zabo, FEES Executive Member too, and from the Faculty of Mechanical and Safety Engineering of Buda University, Budapest. Jochen Eckert, which will participate to this, particularly during the questions and answers. International Organization for Standardization. Peter Nickel, International Social Security Association, and he will participate to the questions and answer phase as well. So we are going to talk about the European Machinery Directive and what it is used for, where it comes from, and where is it going. There's some changes going on, and I would like to talk about them with you. To go on, there are the steps for the webinar, the subjects we want to talk about. What is the directive? What is it about? What applications? And we will see two small videos by which I will illustrate some specific concepts. The impacts on designers, the impacts on the design process, which are important if you want to commercialize a product or receive a product. So manufacturers and owners are concerned. And some evolutions to come by the working groups in the European community. First of all, I would like to know, but we are few for the moment, I would like to know who knows and uses this directive today. I'm sure Alexander does. I don't know if Peter does. Julia, yes, he does.
Yes.
You do. Okay, so this is an important point. I ask this question because quite every time I do it, about half the groups answer me, I know this and I use this. So this is very poor because this directive is mandatory in Europe specifically, but it is mandatory. So this is something we have to know. This is something we have to use, and it saved me from specific situation in design groups. You will see how. What is it? It applies to machinery. We have to consider that a machinery may be a whole workshop. In the whole factory, there are several machines grouped, working together that form a machinery. It applies to the different equipment in it, the safety components, the devices, the diverse devices, and so on. It don't apply to specific situations such as agriculture, motor vehicles, and so on. Those are not in the directive. It's taken over by other standards. The MD is one of the standards, only one, but a big one, used to design tools, machines, and all standards include the available scientific and technical knowledge. It means that in the MD standard, there is specific knowledge about what we can technically do today, but there is also a knowledge about the human factors, the limitations and capacities of human properties. And this is an important point leading to some specific design criteria. We have many applications and pragmatic ones, many examples. We took only two ones. The first one is about safety. I'm going to bring you into an old manufacturing company which produces a dangerous product. Let's have a look. There you can see a graduated ruler placed on the control panel in order to lock three buttons on the on position. Those three buttons automatically return to the off position when released. They activate vibrators implanted on the outer surface of a vertical cylinder and serve to ensure the gravity descent of the powered product. The operating procedures state that these vibrators should not be operated for more than 5 minutes in a row. Why are they blocked by the graduated ruler? To understand this, we must put this action in its full context. First, all the consent staged at the consent stage in the process, an operator is waiting for a container to be filled with the pulverulent product one floor lower. The role of the supervisory operator is to monitor the descent of the product through the displays and to operate the vibrator buttons if necessary, only if necessary, but it appears that it's often necessary. To do this is in front of a console controlling the process of the production line concerned. At the same time, he has 6 other production lines to supervise along a corridor 50 meters long. If an alarm occurs, which happens, on those other production lines, signaled by a rotating beacon that lights on, the operator must go and check the alarm concerned. It can be important, severe, and he may have to intervene quickly on it. But he has no way of knowing it from its location. He cannot know if it's urgent or not. But if he goes away from the column control panel and the product stops its descent, it may jeopardize the whole process and the work organization for the team can become a mess. Once you have understood this, the solution is quite easy. We may put a timer, we may put 2 operators, we may find several solutions because he is in a paradoxical situation. He has to manage too many points of supervision. So we have to understand capacities and limitations of the operators before doing anything in a situation. And this is one criteria detailed in the directive. If I bring you to the second example, not this one. This has a happy end. Luckily, he didn't fall. He would die if he falls. So why do they take such risks? This video is taken at a time of manufacturing change. The product is a plastic strip produced by hot extrusion, and it is necessary to pass from production with a thickness, width, a color, and so on determined to another production. The manufacturing change takes about 50 minutes. During the change, 4 operators run on the equipment. At the end, they are exhausted. No luck, a production tape, the one you just saw, which had been left to hold and pull the next step of the product, it falls. The procedure says that you stop everything. It is necessary because it's too risky, as you saw, and you have to start again from the beginning. So 50 minutes of running everywhere. The operators do not want this, and they make the decision to try to put the tape back in the necessary position and complete the manufacturing change. This case is not foreseen in the design of the installation. Each time it occurs, the operators who have developed an expertise implement the same response. Why does it go this way? Is it a mistake in the design? It's not. It's something else some of us know perfectly. At the time of the analysis, the plant has 2 years old. It took 1 year to build it, and the specifications date from 4 years before the building. The market has changed since the factory was designed. Orders went from several hundred tons per unit to a few tons. As a result, one manufacturing change was planned per year. And when we saw the functioning, there were 4 or 5 per week. So the operators had to optimize the production, the performance, and to adapt themselves. So the solution was not in the factory. That's a mistake we often do. It is not in the factory where we have to find solution. We first have to deal with the paradox of the managing of the company itself. The sales, the production, the decision made by the CEO. So in order to solve this, a consultation between the production manager, the sales manager, and the CEO was done, and we found solutions before changing anything in the functioning of this specific factory. You cannot sell for a ton the same price as for 100 tons. So 2 small examples. The first one is about safety in a risky industry. The second one is about a risk taken by people, by operators during their work. It's not exactly the same scale, but both examples lead to something we do not want to see in our factories. What does the MD says? An accident can have 2 types of consequences: injured people who will be compensated by insurances, and deteriorated equipment which will be covered by insurers. I make a parenthesis for the grave accidents that happen close to the cities. These accidents and others of the production system not recovered by security they are not recovered by security or operators. In the day-to-day life to the facility, there are multiple incidents that do not result in accidents simply because they are recovered first. Operators adapt. They can prevent things. They can see things that are not in the procedures. 2 types of situations: normal use of the equipment, a part failure, an engine failure at the wrong time, can introduce risks and damage. We are here in the real hazard, the unpredictable one. The second type is very different. See, it is an abnormal use of the equipment and operator as actions on moving parts, the area access gate being disarmed or the security bypassed. We see every time this kind of operations. It's no longer a hazard since the 2006 evolution of the MD, of the Machinery Directive. The two videos show something very predictable. The European regulations say to us today that during the design of a machine, we have to understand how people use the existing machines, how they function in comparative situations in order to prevent this kind of thing. What is the reasonably foreseeable misuse, which is a concept developed in the last version particularly? I showed you two small videos. In order to integrate this kind of misuse, it's necessary to make a diagnosis of real working life in a working or several working situations and to interpret correctly the data collected. What do I mean interpret correctly? Too often, I've seen engineers telling to the operators, you are wrong, you do not satisfy the requirements of the procedure. That's right, but why? You have to understand why first before changing anything. And if you sanction too often operators because they do not work the way it's forecasted in documents, you will have your own sanction, which will be, okay, chief, you told me to work the way it's written in the document, but see, in this document, I should do this way, but I can't. Come with me. And the manager will not be able to do his job anymore. This is what we expect from operators. So this concept applies to many different situations, such as the loss of control by an operator, reflex behavior. Yes, we have reflex, and they are not by hazards. We know how we function in specific situations, and so on. To show you a model that functions, that is robust, we have many models of this kind. I'm sure you know them already. You've got something which is a random event, and two ways, the ideal world and the real one. We have defenses put in place in every working situation, which is by skills, people know how to do. Safety rules, we know, we have been educated around the safety rules. Technical defenses, the equipment include some defenses by themselves. Organizational defenses, it means that several services are going to coordinate to see what can happen and prevent it. This is the ideal world. But you have to consider that there is something real in which, because factories change, organization change, technology change, procedures change, so something may happen and may get through the different holes in the defenses. That's normal, that's natural, that's the real life. So having something reliable is temporary. We have to be vigilant about what happens. When we design a new machine, we have to consider that the design is temporary, and we have to forecast that it will have to evolve and it will have to be placed in a specific organization with specific skills and so on. The stakes are about understanding what we have to do, particularly during a design, but not only, during the use of different machines. The graphic you have in front of you shows different class of risks and a difficult detection or an easy detection. Three modalities. The material and permanent risks, the ones that you can see without anybody working in the workshop. The sporadic risks connected to an activity. For that, you need to go in the workshop when people are working. And the organization risks. This is something quite often invisible because the regulations are between different services inside the functioning of services. This is harder to identify. So you see this curve. For this kind of risk, you may identify some of them by inspections, conformity audit, and so on. For the others, you have to do a job analysis of conditions of exposures. You have to go through the different workshops and the different periods of working. And more of all, you cannot skip the fact that you have, for sure, a technical factor. For sure, you've got a human factor, but there's something between the two factors you have to understand. You cannot see only one of them. You have to see both of them at the same time. And this is what tells us the Machinery Directive. The machines have to be adapted to the human functioning. What impacts are we on the designers and on the stakeholders? Designers are on the side of the manufacturers most of the time. Stakeholders are most of the time on the side of owners, the people that buy the machines. This directive is an opportunity for designers because it shows a set of criteria. It shows how we have to design machines. It contains significant ergonomics and end users' contributions. It's a tool for stakeholders and ergonomics in particular. The principle of safety integration and the ergonomic principle are present in this directive, and they are transposed to the European harmonized standards throughout Europe, of course, not in United States or Canada or other countries, but it is a strong standard for us, for Europe. It includes many dimensions of design, including the notion of reasonably foreseeable misuse, which is very useful in order to allow the end users a feedback towards designers and manufacturers. So real life is not always as you think it is. This is something it reminds us. About the satisfaction of design criteria. On this graphic, you can see the customer satisfaction, which may be very satisfied or not satisfied at all, and another scale that shows the uncertain needs. First of all, there's an expressed need, and it's expressed by the customer, and it's expected. This is normal to give it. You have to give this. There's another need, which is the implicit one. The customer never said he wanted this, but if you do not give it to him, there will be something wrong, such as you know, my keyboard, because I guess you understood I was French by my accent. My keyboard is an AZERTY one, but I'm sure you would not like to have one, and most of you prefer a QWERTY one. So we do not write this kind of thing in our requirement sheets. It's natural, it's normal. This is implicit. If you do not satisfy this, your customer will not be satisfied. Last of them, there's something which we call the latent need. which is something created by the designer, by the group that creates the tool. We have to consider the objectives of the owner, the functioning in existing situations, and sometimes there's something new that arises. And the customer did not think about that, and this is a good surprise. It means that it's the job of a design team to create this kind of function answering to the real functioning. So this is something which helps us to gain customers. But more than that, it's something necessary in several situations. The MD gives us specific tools to make the reception of machines. The sheet you can see is something quite standard by which we can make a checkup on what are the properties of the machine. Does it fit to the requirements created in the MD and so on. So it avoids many mistakes by the reception of a machine, because when the owner takes a machine, he buys it and he receives it, he accepts it, he takes the risks with it once the machine has been accepted. Manufacturers and sellers are responsible towards the customers, and an operator is a customer. Someone that buys a vacuum cleaner is a customer. In all cases, manufacturers and sellers are responsible for their design and for acquisition. The concept of liability says that the manufacturer needs to prevent things in order to determine the limits of the machinery when used, in order to make sure all hazards which the machinery can generate are identified and considered along with all association hazardous situations, to estimate all possible health risks and the probability of occurrence, to evaluate all the identified risks and determine all recognized hazards and reduce all risks. That is included in the standards. The design stakes, considering those requirements, say that in particular, the role of the human factor specialists, ergonomics, and generally the design team is in the assessment of the interaction between the human and machines. The design need human functioning models as technical functioning models. It means that we have to create mitigation between different specialists. Sometimes ergonomics specialists, when particularly there's an accident, serve as expert witnesses in case of improper use of machine or accident in a workshop. So many evolution about this responsibility involvement, many evolution in the technical parts of machines, because the current Machinery Directive is about 15 years old, and techniques has evolved. So we are going to see with Pascal in a few slides what happens today. So it means that even today, designers, manufacturers have to deal with different criteria included in the MD as with the reasonably forecastable misuse. I will end this part to open the to Pascal, so that Pascal, you will be able to show us the evolution going on. Come on, Pascal.
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. I will continue the discussion or the presentation made by Bernard with some of the issues discussed in the frame of the adoption of a regulation which will replace the present Machinery Directive in a few years. It is not exactly sure when we are in the process. It is always a little mystery to know what is about at the Commission level, at the Parliament level, at the Member State level. So we are now in the evolution to come. And the next slide, please. Bernard. Yes, thank you. Concerning the evolution to come, the recent impact study ordered by the European Commission proposed to challenge the new stakes in front of the technological development, adapting the essential health and safety requirements of the present Machinery Directive, and to address the challenge posed by the innovation in digitization through public regulation in order to avoid diverging situations. That's a very general aim, and the result is a proposal for regulation on machinery products from 2021, presented by the Commission, which is under discussion in the Parliament and in the Council. But as in different cases, the very general objectives are more or less fulfilled in the present proposal. Concerning the essential health and safety requirement, there is a real up-to-date of the requirements, and it seems rather interesting, and there is no discrepancy between the present directive and the new essential health and safety requirements. There is a real improvement, maybe partial, but improvement. Concerning the challenges posed by innovation, it is more difficult because there was an intention from the European Commission to make a clear link between the regulation on artificial intelligence, which is separate but concerns the machinery field, and the intention at the beginning to have a clear link between the two under process of discussion regulations failed because the artificial intelligence regulation seems to be too complicated or too questionable to be completely in line for the time being with the machinery regulation. So the situation is more or less pending concerning the question of digitization. The next slide, please. So the main substantial change in the proposal are the taking into account the digital technologies in the essential health and safety requirements and safety components. It is, as I just said, more or less done. So in some details, in some items of the former Annex 1 of the directive, which is now has another numbering. Concerning the scope, it is clarified. It was not a very important issue, but there was some difficulties with means of transport on road with lifts, because some slow lifts were not included. No, sorry, rapid lifts were not included in the machinery directive. No, all the kind of lift, as the lift that you use as in big buildings, will be in the machinery directive, but in the future, it's not the case today. So there is a global clarification of the scope, and the link with other directives like medical device or pressure equipment are hopefully clearer. So a big deal was the discussion about the instructions for use, because today the instructions for use are necessarily written on paper, and the demand from manufacturers and some users were to have this on online. And there was an important debate on that. And the compromise is that there will be digital in general, but with paper on demand by the purchasers at the time of the purchase of the machine. So it was the proposal, the initial proposal from the Commission. And it will be evolved in partly, maybe we will speak about a little later. Concerning another important issue, it is a question of high-risk machinery or machinery supposed to have a specific or particular risk. In the present directive, there is a possibility to have a third-party conformity assessment, but it is not compulsory. A lot of manufacturers make appeal to notified bodies who deal with the conformity assessment and certification of machine, but it is not completely compulsory. And in the future, it is foreseen that it will be compulsory, but the debate is still going on this issue. So the next slide, please. So the question is now is the support of machine design. So concerning this important issue, the Machinery Directive foresees a co-design approach and customization. So the degrees of flexibility in design and operation as it is present as opposed to rigid barriers that focus on one way of correct operation. And it is said that sustained relation between stakeholders in the life cycle of machines is proposed, and the design of support machine is seen as opposed to replacement. But behind that, we have the important question of the feedback on the use of the machine and the cooperation between manufacturer and end users. So on this field, there is a debate because there is no real one-way foreseen, one unique procedure. There is a lot of different means, more or less explicit with the Machinery Directive. For example, the manufacturers themselves can organize the user experience like they do for other devices or products. Another issue is that the member states representative and in each member state have to provide market surveillance. That means the control of the conformity of products and the compliance with the Machinery Directive, not only the formal compliance, the fact that there is a CE mark, but the real compliance with the essential safety requirements of the directive, like we can evaluate it as ergonomics. And so the sum up of these statements in different member states are gathered by the so-called administrative cooperation group between the member states. There is also an important way. It is reflections conducted by the notified bodies who are collecting information on the shortcomings or the problems faced with the machinery they certify. And there is a European coordination of notified bodies which produce sheets on the shortcomings, difficulties, etc. They can be used, of course. There is also particular ways initiated, for example, by the trade unions, the so-called feedback method that has been formalized in a SEN document, in a document from the Committee of Standardization in Europe in 2015. And all that initiatives are scattered, are not very gathered together by anyone and not by the European Commission. And it is very important to have more visibility on that because it gives food for thought about the new device to have the sort of constant issues and there's a possibility to give guidelines for the future. And it would be very useful if user guides or comments linked to the Machinery Directive or Machinery New Regulation to give a specific reference to the need to take into account the feedback from users to encourage the manufacturers to assess the ergonomic and safety impact of the machines. And also, it is very important to make the link with that kind of assessment and the content of the Annex 1 of the Machinery Directive, the essential safety requirement, which include many ergonomic aspects. So it is a very open question where we as ergonomists can have an important input. And next slide, please. So recently, we as FIS attended the Machinery Directive Working Group, which is made by about 100 representatives from the member states, from the manufacturers, the notified bodies, the different user associations. And we had the information that there was a green light from the European Parliament and the European Council, a mandate to approve with some change the regulation concerning the machines. So in the new draft version as discussed and adopted at the Council, some changes have been introduced. So there is, as I said, no more reference to the artificial intelligence regulation because the proposal on this issue is going on more slowly. The number of high-risk machinery is reduced in comparison with the current version of the Annex 4, but in the new so-called Annex 1 concerning high-risk machinery, there is two parts, one part with compulsory third-party assessment and another part with the possibility of other kind of assessment. So it is not very clear for the moment, the definitive issue on that. And also the related list of high-risk machinery is reduced and also can be modified by the European Commission according to technical progress through so-called delegate acts. Also, the drafts in the present version for the instructions for use foresee the possibility for the manufacturer to provide digitally, but the safety information remains mandatory on paper for consumer products during 6 months. So there could be debate on what is in safety information strictly. Maybe for safety reasons, border information is necessary because it is not easy to make the difference between normal information and safety information. And also the notion of consumer products can be difficult to identify because a lot of machines can migrate from industry to particular user and also for location, etc. So the debate is not closed, I think, on this issue. So in principle, the adoption of the Machinery Directive regulation is expected in the coming months. Standards not impacted by the change in the safety requirements modification can remain unchanged, and a smooth transition is foreseen. But it is more an objective because smooth in the field of standardization with a lot of standards can be not so easy to put into practice. So, on conclusion of this issue, that it is important to note that many member states and organization representatives asked for the setup of a group to rewrite the guide for the application of the directive. So the next slide, please. So one important issue is that the Annex 3 of the draft regulation has been changed, improved. The point 116 concerning ergonomics was made at the beginning of very basic requirements concerning ergonomics. And now with the two paragraphs that have been added, we have a broader presentation of ergonomics, more updated, I think. So have to be taken into account by the product manufacturer, the necessity to adapt the human machinery product interface to the foreseeable characteristic of the operators, including with respect to a machinery product with intended fully or partially evolving behavior or logic that is designed to operate with varying levels of autonomy. So it is not maybe very easy to understand, but it is linked to what Bernard presented before, to have to take really into account the interface between the human in the various states of human with the training, abilities, shortcoming, etc., information level, and the design of the machine. And also another issue is to have a machinery product adapted. So, you know, I have a, thank you, on the F, adapting with the intended fully or partially evolving behavioral logic that is designed to operate with varying levels of autonomy to respond to people adequately and appropriately, verbally through words and non-verbally through gestures, facial expressions of body movement, and to communicate its planned actions, what it's going to do and why, to operators in a comprehensible manner. So it is more precise to deal with the autonomy of the workers, the context, organizational context in which he's placed, and the various kind of exchange of informations, order, communication between different partners in the industry, etc. So it is rather global, but we can state that it has to see with the present conception of ergonomics that we share. So it gives a little more food to present the global approach and the human-centered approach that we expect to present to manufacturers and to users, buyers of the machine. So it gives more power to present our requirements, I think. And next slide, please. So the last question, not the least, it is the question of the involvement for the European Ergonomic Societies, which contribution to the improvement of the directive. So in fact, the idea, the requirement through our activity at national, at European level are more or less present in the European directive. Some of the items that I mentioned are show that we are present even if we have not played an important role in the revision process. We wear that more as monitoring the process. For 2 years, formally involved as FIS representative in the European Commission working group. But of course, we could do better things, we make better proposal. Maybe in the present discussion, but the discussion comes to the end, and it is very difficult at this level to be present. We can mostly be present through the link we can have with the representative at different national levels, the member states. But maybe we can do more, and also in the future with the implementation of the new regulation, with the guides that will provide the European Commission with other tools, other debate and webinar that we can organize at national or European level. We can for sure do things better, and we are completely open to our proposal and reflections. And I think this is the conclusion. Thank you. Next slide. Okay.
So this was the conclusion. Thank you a lot, Pascal. And we would like to discuss, to see your questions. I just saw the discussion area and some comments. And yes, Javier, the adaptation, the James Reason's model is an adaptation, one of the numerous adaptations. We should have said that, you're right. So, any questions, any comments, any suggestions? The work is going on, as said Pascal. So this is as well something by which this webinar, we try to valorize what's happening, what gives us this directive, and to see how we can manage the changes. So, opening, let us know what you think. Elena has a question. How do I give the...
Okay, so can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, yeah, so there are, thank you for the presentation. I have huge amount of questions, but I just try to pack it in small size, the questions. If I start from the end concerning about the member societies, my question is that do we know how many member societies have such ergonomists as a member who are working on the field of machinery and new technology design? So that is a bit, at least in Finland, my concern that what is now really the role and possibilities member societies to put effort on this topic you are presenting here, and then how to involve universities, governments, and ministry, how to wake up their interest. Because depending the member societies, I'm not sure that if there is no power enough or maybe competencies and skills to work for this, but this is just a kind of a question concerning to this. And then going back to the old days when I used to work for an organization as an internal human factors engineer, taking care about ergonomics in machine and technology design, which was concerning about new technologies. My experience over 15 years ago was that no supplier had ergonomic specialist in their use. So it was always our job to make sure that ergonomics is taken into account, since people are looking pretty much the CE marking, which is now dealing with the safety issues, but there is not required ergonomics. And when it comes to ergonomics, it's a bunch of directives that you have to gather depending what kind of technology and what kind of manufacturing process is in question. So the skills and competencies that are needed there from the ergonomist is my interest, that how we get that sort of educated and specified, that what it takes when an ergonomist is a member of a team member in a project, which is now taking care about this whole circus concerning about applying and designing and ordering the new machines and technologies. And then the question is that if the ergonomist is on the customer side, supplier side, or if it's an external person who is taking now and then. So these kind of differences are also maybe playing a quite big role when it comes to this kind of specification about customer specific needs, and especially after the technology is implemented in the final environment where it is used. There are coming actually quite often biggest problems that if those are not taken into account in the design phase. So these are the kind of concerns what came into my mind.
I may have some comments in addition to yours in three parts. I have no idea how the use of ergonomic specialists or human factor specialists is done in different countries. Honestly, we do not know. We know through our exchanges with the CIHF that it's quite important in UK. I know from my own experience of ergonomist in France. I worked many times with other specialists for the design of new tools, of new factories. It is particularly true in risky industry. Third of all, there's something that helps us to be included in work project, which is the status of European ergonomist. And there's a lobbying done by the CRI, by Arte, and by several organizations through different countries that helps the users of the discipline to identify who is a trained practitioner. So I have no clear answer to your question, but I can say that this is something that is spreading today. It's more and more often to see an ergonomist in a project team. Any other comments, questions? Pascal, just open your micro.
Yes, yes, it is a small answer to Elena, but not very satisfactory. A few years ago, when Sylvain Leduc was still chair of FEES, we had a discussion with ETUI about the Machinery Directive, and we have produced a questionnaire on Machinery Directive to our members, to the European ergonomists. And the result is, the questionnaire was maybe not very relevant, but I don't remember exactly where it is, but it is somewhere in our papers. And the problem is we had no answer to the questionnaire. Although I know that some of my colleagues are using as consultant or as internal ergonomists are using the Machinery Directive, of course, but the fact to answer broadly to the use, to the questions that are raised by the directive is not easy. When there was an inquiry made by the ETUI in 4 countries, Germany, Italy, France, and I don't remember the fourth country, we have had field studies involving ergonomics colleagues in different countries. And the most important result of this process was the guide I mentioned concerning the feedback method that was created by our Italian colleagues linked with ETUI. So there is activity, of course, and it is, I'm certain, but to gather all the information in all countries concerning the use and reflections on machinery is difficult to reach. And I think it is the same on different issues. I have tried to gather information, for example, on the issue handicapped person and ergonomics. We have very few answers, but I know that a lot of ergonomists deal with this issue in different countries. So there is a big discrepancy on the use of some device, of some reflection, and the ability to report on that. And it is obvious that we have this difficulty in different fields. So we can not, I think, not have a global view. We can just have some marks on the ground to know what happens.
Thank you, Pascal. Julia, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Maybe it's more a comment. So where I'm going, I see that ergonomists are working everywhere in standardization and everywhere where we are needed. But I think the problem is that we have no clear understanding where we are. So we as national ergonomic societies or FEES, don't know where ergonomists are working. We have some information from the EURERG applications or from here and there, but no clear knowledge. But Bernard, you see, we have more panelists here, so maybe Peter Nickel can have some insight from his part, and we can see that Johan Eckhart is here, who is the governor of the ergonomist thesis in ISO and at SEN. So no one knows better whether ergonomists are working with standardization or not than Johan. So maybe we can ask their opinion, how they see.
You're free to go on, Peter or Joshin.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, it's even for me, it's not easy to say where are all the ergonomics experts and what they do and in what kind of activities they are involved. But I think that Pascal made a good point in highlighting at least few information that will come with the next directive. And as far as I am informed as well, is that with the new directive, the directive wants to sharpen the impact of ergonomics. And I think that we do have a lot of knowledge in the area of in the area of ergonomics we could use, but I'm still concerned about how to get this kind of knowledge into good practice. So and therefore we need to get in touch to people who like to be involved, not only in ergonomics in general, but especially in ergonomics related to machinery safety, because sometimes this is a little bit more tricky, and sometimes this is a little bit more specific. So we do have a lot of people working in the area of usability. However, we need to take care about the discussion in usability going on, which is lacking the point of safety. So, well, this is one aspect I think which is important for the future. The other thing is that I myself, I'm involved in an international group working on this combination of safety and ergonomics. We have a little bit concern about the future of machinery safety and design. And this this international group has started to put together first information that should be taken into account when you, as an ergonomic expert, deal with machinery safety. However, a lot of information is still missing. So, meaning that we in our group are from different countries, and some of them are from Europe. That means some of them know or have a relationship to the Machinery Directive, but we are still looking for, well, let's say partners, people interested in who might like to contribute. There are a lot of ergonomics people who have some expertise, but I am sure that they are not all organized in the societies. So when I look into standardization together with Jochen, and I'm involved in some activities. At least some people who work in the field of ergonomics are not necessarily member of some ergonomic societies. So it would be good to not only spread the word, well, let's say within societies, but also get other contexts involved. And I'm myself work in the field of occupational safety and health, and ergonomics plays a role. And I think it should play a much bigger role as it is called for the Future Machinery Directive.
Thank you, Peter. Before Elena, perhaps Yoshen, would you have a word?
Hello, Bernard. Thank you for giving me the floor. I'm late. Sorry for that. I thought we start this hour. So I have to ask Peter for the content and discussions until now. So I want to step in after some more discussion.
Anyway, this has been recorded and you will have it on YouTube.
Yes, I can have the
Okay,
reported,
okay.
but I now can't really contribute. Or do you have a definite question for me?
Not exactly, but maybe it will come.
Maybe if I can ask, because we know that ISO and IEA are lionizing in standardization, so it's clear. But what is your opinion how we can support the best the machinery safety related standardization, because it's a European level standardization, and FIS is not lionizing with SEN. So how do you think it can be connected?
In the SEN and also in the
FIS
ISO?
or ISO, or how should we channel ergonomics into standardization from this side? We can use ISO, IEA collaboration to help the machinery safety related standardization, or what? I don't know.
I think the most work is done in the SEN body because it's an European topic. And I would I look forward the contributions of a lot of ergonomists, because in some working groups we need the experiences of people from a lot of countries, even if they are not from European countries. Mm-hmm. Once we have the health and safety requirements from the Annex 1 in the Machinery Directive, and to say in the different topics of ergonomics, what are the new essential requirements from the revised Machinery Directive. Especially there are new topics discussed for developing machines, and I'm not sure, or we have to find out in which topics of ergonomics, in which parts we have to change the different standards. So at first to find out which standards are to be changed on new requirements. And the second, that would be a lot of work maybe to revise the standards where we have to put in the new topics of developing machines and the safety requirements to protect our the working people.
Thank you, Joshen. I see that Elena raised her hand, and then I will give the floor to Maria. She wrote a question in the discussion area. So, Elena, would you like?
About this ISO, IEA, and EU level standards. As an example from Finland, the person from Metsta, which is now the place where they are sort of developing standards and then later on sending them to ISO. So for example, there is now a big worry about these exoskeletons, these motorized exoskeletons, which are under Machinery Directive. So question is that there is a huge amount of different kind of standards concerning about the motorized exoskeletons in USA, but we don't have such here in Europe. And now the question was that are we going to just wait what is coming from US, or are we somehow starting to work ourselves? And we had a couple of meetings, and we have created some material to find ergonomic specialist to this team to start this work. But the problem is that there isn't coming out anyone. So we have been trying to market this, that hey, this is a very urgent situation, because it's not only question about interface between human and the exoskeleton, but it is the whole package, that what the companies need to know before they even start to think about that, hey, let's buy some exoskeletons, because there's a whole big bunch of things that needs to be known and able to take into account before selecting any of those. And now the question is that how we can handle this. So if you have some information that if somebody in some country in EU is working with this, I guess that it would be nice to also know, because there's coming all the time new needs, and how do we organize ourselves in Europe? For example, how in each of the countries in Europe they deal with these standards changes or new standards that are needed, how we can sort of utilize cooperation between these kind of institutions that deal with those things, because in such way we could maybe find the European ergonomic specialists who are dealing with this kind of things concerning about the Machinery Directive. That's just the kind of, mark here.
Yes, there's some information to gather about the practitioners. I agree too. I would like to give the floor to Maria Chiara and then to Peter, if you want. Maria? Knock once if you're here.
Yes, sorry, I have to mute myself once I was given the contact. So, no, I wrote this in the chat, but also in the questions. One useful element to keep into account, my name is Maria Chiara Leva, I'm the current chair of the Irish Human Factors and Ergonomics Society. And what we found valuable was if you have a connection with your national standard authority, as a society, you can foster this relationship, and through them, you can suggest and recommend people that can be included as experts at national level for the working group in the different level of the ISO technical committee, especially committees that are for which the human factors expertise and the human factors input is relevant. So I'm talking about, I don't know, the technical committee on ISO 159, or the one about that you mentioned. The connection between ISO and IEC is quite strong. So normally they ask for people to be recommended when there is a crossover between the two. That's why I'm suggesting to consider this as a way that we can even have a forum at Federation of the Ergonomic Societies, where we share our experience also as these national links develop. And some of us are member already in technical committee for the ISO. I, for one, I am in some of them with more or less active role. So it would be useful to consider a forum for sharing our experiences on that, and offer this as a positive way to engage with the work of the ISO committee through the national authorities, if possible, for many societies that are here today, for instance. I don't know if it's useful. That's the comment I wanted to raise.
Thanks, Chiara. This is a good idea, creating a forum allowing us to share information between practitioners working on new technologies. That's an idea. We will jot it down. Peter, would you like to take the floor?
I just wanted to give a few comments on what has been asked by Elena. She was asking, or she was describing that sometimes it is hard to find people with the right expertise and I would in general agree that it is always not that easy. And although it might not always be the solution, I think we do have the societies at different levels, at national level, at the European level, and at international level. My personal impression is that we in these days, or in these times, we do have another dynamic in activities at all levels of society, of societies. So it might not be a bad time to get in contact and ask and see whether there's someone around whom one could get in touch to. And since we are talking about machinery directive, and this is organized by the European Union membership countries, European standardization plays an important role, and therefore it would always be great, and I'm sure you will always be welcome if you ask someone who is involved in this kind of standardization whether there are experts around. And at the same time there's a high need to get in more people interested in this topic, and get in more people working in this area, because what could be done and what should be done is in a way specifically described in these European standards, because at least we know it from the machinery directive we have available right now. It's explicitly referred to specific standards, and this is a source of information for all manufacturers and people who are involved in machinery design. So we need to get this the standards improved, and we need to get more people on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. For sure, we will forecast information and try to get some more people involved in the process. Chiara said there's the issue of function allocation too that could be studied. But yes, of course, US standard give us many information about that, and it's not very much described in the MD. I agree with that. And there's something to do with it, depending on the way we consider the function allocation, of course. But this is a technical debate we could have together later. Is there any other questions, comments, things you would like to be discussed in the floor?
I apologize to all. I also got the timing wrong. I managed to get last week's right, but somehow missed this one. Because in between we had the going away from summertime daylight saving, and well, it didn't automatically update in my agenda. But anyway, although I missed most of the discussion, I think there's something that is raising in my mind, which I think applies to not just ergonomics. I know for a fact that mechanical risks, despite the numerous decades of experience that most industry sectors have with managing mechanical risks. It remains a problem that, well, not only recently has become a much more dynamic context, so the sources of risk and the nature of the mechanical risk of it and how it expresses in reality has changed dramatically and is likely to do so for the upcoming decades at least. But what I think is also where I think there's a parallel with the ergonomic situation is it's not something that you can prepare yourself to deal with through basic training. And it's not enough to just go through the standards and things like machinery directives. Going through that and reading through those documents will not necessarily get you to where you need to be to deal with these problems in the real world. It's a lot more complex than that. And again, the evidence of that is how it's still very difficult for many organizations, despite having people with the right technical skills and the right professional certification. They struggle to deal with the demands of managing mechanical risks for the equipment state and machine state they have in their workplaces. So I guess that goes down to the issue of the relation between workers and technology is becoming increasingly complex, increasingly tightly coupled. And anticipating what certain changes in the standards, such as machinery directives, implicate and what we need to prepare for the upcoming future is not something that can be done through a textbook training or the reading of these standards. So yes, as a society, as a federation of societies, there's work that we can do, but there's more that needs to come in the back of that as well.
What you mentioned is a specific question about mechanical risks specific to mechanics, but not only, because behind mechanics, you've got users as well. So I agree. This question has to be included in the human factor interfaces as well. So reliability of mechanics, of techniques, is linked to human factors too. I see that Maria had another question in the Q&R area. And I think it's quite similar to the one that Elena gave us. Could you have a word on that, Maria?
No, Bernard, it was the same as because I put it in the Q&A thinking that I don't know if you guys were looking at the webinar chat, but I know you're looking at it. No, it's just to say as a reiteration of some of the things that also Pedro mentioned. I think there is a space of work, especially in the new concept of safety of machinery when coupled with the autonomous systems. Okay, so that's going to completely revolutionary, be completely different than what we currently consider automation. And the scope of functional location analysis, especially what is safe to consider a function that is autonomously done and what is safe to consider a function that can be carried out by a human being, and how the risk-informed criteria could be used. And that is something that I know for a fact is being considered in the technical committee for the ISO Technical Committee 59, which is about human-centered design, but it should be included also in the IEC committee for instance, the safety integrity level analysis and things like this. So if we could collectively harmonize our efforts into participating in those technical committees, inputting those know-how in a way that it's relevant for the revision of those IEC standards and ISO standards, I think it would be a very good achievement as a community of practice.
Mm. There's a European practitioner group to be created, so we'll think about that, including Pascal and the executive members. Good idea, Chiara. Any other questions or comments? So I see time is running, so I don't want to take more of your time. Thanks a lot to all to participate to this webinar. We are honored by your presence and hope we have brought to you some clues and tools so that you will have them during your practice. See you soon.